set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Neyland's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Neyland and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into an emergency live stream here on the Country Roads webcast. December 1st, and it finally happened. It was a mere less than 48 hours ago, I guess, we did our game week live stream like we've done all season. And the poll of the night that I ran in that stream was asking you guys if you felt like the game against Texas Tech would end up being Neal Brown's last at WVU. And I think after the results of the game against Texas Tech, we all felt like that was a greater possibility, to the point where all of Mountaineer Nation was refreshing their phones all day, looking at their Twitter feeds, looking at Football Scoop, the coaching websites, all of that, trying to see if any news was going to break. And then just before 4 p.m., it started to come out. 247 had it. Mike Kazaza, Chris Anderson, Matt Zenitz from CBS Sports, a lot of people sharing it. And, of course, now it's broken wide, and even a statement from WVU. So it's official. Neal Brown no longer the head coach at WVU. Brad, man, how you doing? How you feeling with this news break and just initial reaction from all of it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a bit sad about it. I think that if you've been a long-time listener of this podcast, you know that we've been long-term Neal Brown stands. I think that watching him come in and feeling the hype, it was hard to not get behind the guy. And I think that still looking at it to this day, I think he's a top-notch guy. I think he came up here and he tried his best, and it just didn't happen. He's just couldn't get it done at the Power 5 level, couldn't get it done at a big school like West Virginia where it just matters more. But at the end of the day, it was a business decision. You have to move on, and as much as you love the guy, you got to get wins. And when you're a university like West Virginia University and the whole state looks up to you and you're actually an enormous economic driving factor, you can't afford to not be good in football. And so you might love him to death, but at some point in time, you've just got to say this isn't working. Like I said, bringing him back next year, I didn't think that there was anything he could do to make me think that he could be any better next year, which is why I was like, hey, I don't know why you bring him back. So he doesn't show anything different. But at this point, I think it's the best thing for the university. I think it's the best thing for Neal Brown. And I guess we'll see how the apples fall over the next couple of weeks and what happens with the bowl game, who's going to step up, whether they're going to use Chad Scott or bring in an intern. I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about that.
I'm still waiting to hear about is the bowl game. They haven't said one way or the other. I'm assuming that Neal's not going to be there, so I wonder if they'll have someone stick around, the rest of the staff stick around, someone be interim. I know I heard, I think it was Chris and Mike said that the staff actually have 1 year left on their contract, so they'll stick around probably for the bowl game, I'm sure. And then whoever the new coach is will probably bring in his whole new staff. I mean, he could choose to keep him, but I highly doubt that would happen. But I agree with your sentiments there. I think the one thing I want to add, for sure, and we're going to share this official statement from Ren Baker here in a few, and some other things here that we want to talk about the Neal Brown era, kind of some of the stats from it and such. But, we wanted to share our opening thoughts here, just kind of get into how we feel about it before that. And I want to applaud Ren Baker for doing what I think, had to be done And like you said, it's a tough decision, with people involved, families, things of that nature. And Neal Brown is a really good guy. He's great at seemingly everything except getting wins on the football field, which is ultimately, what the main thing you need him to do. And we've talked about that in the past. And like we said, we were ardent Neal Brown supporters, from day one. If you'd have told me back in 2019 when we were hiring him that this is where we'd be 6 years from now, I wouldn't have believed you because, everything was just, it was a home run hire, his attention to detail. We loved, I got to trust the climb shirt. I got to trust the climb hat.
Sure, his family first, like that just like resounded with West Virginia. And that's why he like synced in so well, so easily.
Yeah, it seemed like the perfect fit. And there was just some type of disconnect, some intangible thing that wasn't clicking here at West Virginia, and sometimes it's just not a good fit because it wasn't leading to wins on the field. And so unfortunately at some point even we had to take our golden blue glasses off, despite the fact of liking Neal Brown the person, and start looking at it more objectively over the past about season and a half or so, or however long it's been now. And really that's when we started judging more harshly throughout this season, when we all decided it's finally time for a change, as we talked about on the show previously. So it needed to happen. Wish him the best. Maybe he goes on to UMass and he has success there, revamps UMass. There was intro there for sure. I appreciate the love on the intro there, Tosh Miller, Todd Rithrow. I appreciate you guys being here. David, come and see you all in here. Anybody else that's in here, share your thoughts on the move. Any questions, comments you got there, throw them in the chat. I'll try and throw a poll up here in a bit. But if you guys want to help out, one fast, easy, free way is just hitting the like button. That helps us with the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe here. A ton of WVU football content. We'll be covering this coaching search throughout its movement now moving forward. We cover recruiting, transfer portal. Then if you become a channel member here, if you want to get a chance to support us monthly, that helps a lot. You can do that for as low as $1.99 a month. And if you're a big-time WVU football fan, you get depth chart projections, player grades, snap counts, game rewatches, film reviews following each game. So you got 12 film reviews you can go back and look on from this season. All that if you become a channel member here at the Country Roads Webcast. We appreciate that type of support as well if you can support us monthly. But the fast, easy, and free way is just the thumbs up button and subscribing. But let's read through the statement real quick, Brad. Because I think that people may not have got a chance to see it from Lynn Baker. But nonetheless, like the only thing I was expecting was something about the bowl game, and still haven't heard anything about that. We'll try and check up on social media and stuff throughout this stream and see if there are any further updates. But this is officially from the university. Like I said, leaked out originally from a lot of different news sources. 247 and CBS were the first ones I saw that had it. But finally, 4:04 p.m. is where it came out from the university here on WVUsports.com. West Virginia makes the change in the leadership program. Ren Baker announced that he has made a change in the football program, with Neal Brown's tenure concluding after 6 seasons. And then we get into Ren Baker's statements here. Coach Brown is a great person, and he served as tremendous ambassador for West Virginia University. He led our storied program with class and integrity, and always put in the hard work necessary to allow for success. We are grateful to Neal, his wife Brooke, and their children for their continued contributions to our university, community, and state, and we wish them the very best in their next endeavor. Brown ends his career with a record of 37 and 35 overall, which, that's, the wide perspective. We're going to get into some of the inside of his record overall, some stuff that people put out on social media the past couple of days that I think really, kind of tells the tale, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Brown Mountaineer teams will have competed in 4 bowl games in his 6 years, including 4 victories in Liberty and Mayo Bowls. His overall coaching record now 72 and 51 after 10 seasons at WVU and Troy. And then Baker concludes the statement, and this was my favorite part here of the statement that he made, is that they will keep their focus on the young men in the program, prepare for the bowl game. But this is the part that I enjoyed, is that Baker added the national search for the 36th head coach is already underway. He's already doing the work, guys. You guys know he always talked about having a list ready. He's already doing the work, and he says he is confident that with the strong alignment among the university leadership, our passionate supporters, and the proud history and willingness to invest, we will have an outstanding pool of candidates. And hopefully that remains true, but that's the statement from the university there. Any thoughts following that, Brad?
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, it was a strong move by Ren Baker. I mean, it was the university's in no great position to be just like tossing out money to buy out a coach. And I really honestly think I was listening to the 3 guys, which has been funny to see a lot of people just get so upset with the 3 guys. I mean, they're such Mountaineer homers, and they're in love with the university. They're never going to speak bad on people. I don't know what they expect from them, but listening to Hoppy today was just talking about it. And, he was just saying that you can't do that. At West Virginia, just doesn't work. Wish the best for him. But at the end of the day, it doesn't happen. So, Yeah, but like Ren Baker, he said that Ren Baker and Gordon Gee want to keep Neal Brown. He said, but he didn't do the things that allowed him to keep him pretty much. And I think that was pretty telling that, everybody wanted to keep Neal Brown, but at the end of the day, this was a tough decision. And I think that really a lot of credit goes to Ren Baker for being willing to pull that trigger. And also shout out to the donors for being willing to tell him to, not hold back on that. I think that matters.
It's big for him. If not, it would have fell on him. I think if they'd have made the decision to keep Neal Brown, then some people may have wanted to put some heat on Ren Baker. And so now with this decision, he kind of endears himself to WVU fans because they all wanted this move. He made it happen. So they're going to be really happy to see that. And then also he gets a chance to make his football hire. And we saw his hires in the women's basketball and men's basketball program. If he makes a hire that rejuvenates the football program, you talk about a athletic director with a sky high, trajectory then that's the two main sports that matter the most. So
yeah, and he talked about, in his he went on a radio show a few weeks ago, or I think last week, and he was talking about, whether it was worth seeing if the guy that you have, given the right resources, can be successful, or if it's worth giving it to a new guy. And I think that he kind of got to this point. He came in at the end of the year before last, was able to see kind of like a little bit of what Neal Brown could do. Neal Brown puts together a pretty good season last year and says, okay, I'm going to give you've got a buttload of seniors. I'm going to give you every game imaginable. I'm going to give you all the tools I could imagine. I'm going to give you Pat McAfee. I'm going to give you a Cole Rush. Like, I'm going to change the lights. I'm going to do everything I can for you. And he just didn't produce. And I think that's really ultimately what it came down for Ren this year was just, hey, I can't afford another year of wait and see. I've got to capitalize, because I think that the fans will get rejuvenized. I think that people will get excited. I mean, we got 55 people in the chat right now because we want to talk about Neal Brown being fired. And so, I think the fans are itching for something to kind of get out there and be behind. And so, like you said, he gets to be a hero in this aspect, but also doing what needs to be done. And it was a incredibly hard decision, but it's what needed to happen.
Agreed. I agree 100%. And yes, Appalachian Paisano, it is actually official now. Just read off the official statement from the university there. Ren Baker put it out at about 4:04 p.m., so about an hour and change now. Official. There's another question here I saw that springboarded me into something else that I wanted to talk about here if I could find it. Appreciate everybody coming in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible here throughout the stream. If you want to guarantee the foolproof way, of course, if you send it as super chat, it'll mark it for us and we'll be able to pull it up on the stream, and we appreciate that support as well. We'll try and get all to the questions from channel members as well there as we got to WVU Earl's comment and Appalachian Paisanos. See if I can find it. Here it is. Andy Schuler, appreciate you. No wasted time. That seemed quick. We'll be interested to see what player shakeups happen with this move. Indeed, and I think that's going to be the case regardless. We've talked about that in the past with revenue sharing coming up and such. There's going to be a lot of transfers around the nation anyways, but that leads into one thing I wanted to share here. Skylar Callahan put this one out as far as WVU player reactions and some commit reactions to the firing of Neal Brown. Brody McWhorter is, of course, a commit that we have coming in. Hopefully he stays committed. He's a very high-ranking quarterback. Obviously, some of the recruits we may lose. I know more on that in a second as well. Scotty Fox with the face palm emoji, another QB commit we have. Same for a tight end commit we have in Jackson Acquarty. We'll get some of the current players. Rodney Gallagher, a little sad there. Gavin Crawford, another commit, just sharing a picture of him with Coach Brown. Johnny Williams, see his reaction there as well. Brandon Yates and Josiah Trotter and others here throughout. And speaking of the players, that brings me to talking about how the players were informed. And because there's a lot of people like to know how these things happen when they happen. Like I said, it came out around 4 p.m., started coming out, and 247 was one of those on it. And Chris Anderson from 247 got this. You see, this came out about a few minutes before 4, and WVU had already informed Neal Brown that they're going to be looking for a head coach and that they were going to inform the team on a 4 p.m. Zoom meeting. So that's kind of how the way that it was handled, I guess, for the Mountaineers as far as the process there and some of the player reactions that's going on. But I think, you're going to have that, and you can expect to see, plenty of transfers probably. But like I said, that may have been the case either way with or without the coaching change. But now, the transfer portal, I think, officially opens up December 9th. It may open up now for the players because I think they do get, 30 days when a coaching change happens. So maybe you're opening it up like a week earlier. So not too much of a change there. And hopefully you're what I like about the move from Wren as well is that you're getting kind of a jump start. There was a few other programs that have made moves, Purdue, UNC, UCF, but you're right there and one of the first ones to make a move. So you put yourself into the front of that, coaching carousel there, right into the midst with these others that are involved. So I like the aspect of not waiting, because a lot of people thought we may wait till after the bowl game, and I figured we probably wouldn't, and it turns out that we didn't. But those are kind of, some of the player reactions there anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that they were informed before this. I hope they're not finding out.
Yeah, that's what kind of stuck out to me about informing them via the Zoom
it doesn't
meeting.
seem like they kind of like reacted like a thanks coach, whatever. It seemed like it was more of a raw emotion kind of tweet there.
Yeah, because I figured they would give Neal Brown a chance to meet with him, but maybe he was involved in that Zoom meeting, I'm sure. But either way, and like you said, seeing some of the reactions on social media, because before I saw the article, I saw some of them just popping up randomly on the feed, and some of them looked like almost, like you said, surprised that they didn't even know, and they almost found out via social media. But maybe that was just the way they were taking it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we'll see. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of shakeout this year anyway, but. I think that this is where it comes down to it. I think Neal Brown really embodied West Virginia culture, but he was not West Virginia culture. I think that he just kind of like mimicked it. And I think that that's what we loved. And so, I think we can find that in somebody else and be able to like embrace that with somebody else. And I think that's the part I've got to remind myself of is that, Neal Brown didn't make West Virginia. He was just, by all intents and purposes, like you said, perfect fit off the jump, just go win football. And we can find somebody that can do both.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to find somebody that can win the games, and hopefully it's a better fit. And I think that's what it ultimately, boils down here. Is I've seen multiple people say here. I see Drumwolf say it as well. Eric said it earlier. Good man, but just not a good fit at WVU. And I think that's that's a good way to put it. And hopefully ends up being a better fit somewhere else. Drumwolf asked if you think they turned down the bowl game. I know there's been rumors of that. I think it probably depends on how many transfers bolt and how quickly they bolt. If you end up not having a roster to be able to compete, I think that's the only reason West Virginia would turn it down. I think that was kind of the thinking of people thinking that they may do that. But, I think if they had already decided that, Wren Baker would probably put that in the announcement. So I think for now they're planning on playing it. And you even saw in Wren Baker's statement there that specifically, if I could get it out correctly there, specifically, whatever, are planning on preparing for the bowl game. So seems like they're going to play in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's just a chance. I don't think that you can waste it. I think that there's so much money involved probably in it. So yeah, I think that you'll see it. Who you actually see playing it, that's a good question. We might see some Ryder Burton, so.
Hey, you never know. It's a possibility. Really just depends on, I guess, what Nico's going to decide now moving forward. I know a lot of people were expecting he would leave if Neal does. So we'll have to see what happens.
Also, depending on who you get, you might get a lot of transition of the, other coaches bringing in people, hot transfer portal. I know we're not necessarily in a great NIL position right now, but there's potential out there. We're not going away just because Neal Brown's going away. So,
indeed. Yeah, and here's good stuff here, Dad. Appreciate you sharing that one. I definitely got the thing here from Chris Anderson. Actually, I was going to share that too. That because you're going to see some of this, and I think that this is one reason. Over the past week or so, we've had a few decommits in the class. Maybe some people felt like could see the movement on Twitter. They see the fans talking, and they get worried, and maybe they thought that this may be coming. So a couple people already have decommitted or flipped commitments, and now. Once this happened, I think that just a few minutes ago, Chris Anderson, 4:38, about an hour or less ago, right after the announcement, already did a decommitment from defensive lineman Evan Powell from the class. And so that's another thing we'll continue to track here on the CRW is who decommits that's already verbal to West Virginia as signing day approaches, coming up just a couple days away now, this coming Wednesday, and I'll be covering that on Wednesday as the signings come in. But the other thing, of course, that we wanted to talk about, I think we got to take a look at is kind of Neal Brown's tenure. And I got a couple of tweets here. One tweet from Logan Carney and then a nice thread from Jake Lance that I thought did a good job kind of summing this up on social media. But Logan Carney said, did the math to double check in program history. No WVU head coach has ever overseen an entirely worse 6-year stretch than the current stretch Neal Brown's on with the 37-35 winning percentage of 51% there. But Jake Lance, I think, breaks it down even further here. And, some people wondered why this would happen and stuff. And this is, I think, a great, pretty much reason for you right here, broken down to the T, because to me, it's all about, not winning the big games, not beating the teams with the winning record. And that really was, I think, driven home for me this season when you look at this year and all the teams that you've beaten have losing records, say for your, I don't know what Albany's record ended up being, but you have an FCS win and you beat 5 teams with losing records for your 6 wins. But throughout the tenure, that's kind of been the case, unfortunately. Jake Lance breaks it down here. Well, you guys give him a follow on social media at Night Stare and check out his work for the Smoking Musket if you haven't already. But Brown won 37 games at WVU in his 6 seasons. Of those 37 wins, 6 were against FCS teams. So outside of the FCS, Neal Brown was 31-35 against FBS teams. And then of the 31 FBS teams that Neal Brown beat while at West Virginia, only 11 of them were bowl eligible. Kansas State, Army, TCU, Virginia Tech, Iowa State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, UCF, and UNC. And of those, only 2 of those won their bowl game. Of the 11 teams that he beat that were bowl eligible then, breaking that down even further, 7 finished with a winning record, meaning 24 of Neal Brown's 31 wins came against teams who finished below 500 at the end of the year. And of the 7 teams, so this other 7 here in this 31 that we're talking about, who finished above 500, only 4 finished more than 1 game above 500, those being Kansas State, Army, TCU, and UNC. Army is the only one with more than 8 wins. So Neal Brown really only beat 1 team with more than 8 wins there, and that was Army. His opponent winning percentage by a year, the opponents that he beat in 2019 had won 40% of their games, 2020, 42, 2021, 40, 2022, 44, 2023, 40%. And this year, the people that West Virginia had beaten had only won 35% of their games. So the teams that he beat had a total average winning percentage of 40. So, no one that was a winning team that he could really beat at West Virginia. That, remains the case. Also, he states out here 0 weeks ranked in the AP poll, 0 wins against teams who finished ranked, 4 wins against teams who were ranked at the time, and 4-17 record against ranked teams who, of course, were ranked at the time of West Virginia playing them, and a 10-game losing streak. They haven't beaten a ranked team since back in 2021, Virginia Tech. So that's kind of what sums it up, I think, and some of those things is probably what Ren Baker saw, but I had to, of course, share that because that was really great work. I thought kind of summing it all up, and I'm sure Ren Baker had similar stats to that kind of led into him, making that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that through my years watching Neal Brown, one of my biggest frustrations to him was that he was never consistent. And now looking back on it, I see that he was being consistent. He was just being consistently mediocre. And it was just, hitting that middle mark every single time. You never be able to put a whole entire game together. Playing calling was also consistently strange throughout. We had one good year without procedural penalties when we had Zach Frazier, and then after that, kind of went back a step again. So, yeah. That's where we're at.
Yeah, man, 100%. It really is. I see some questions coming in the chat. Well, except we'll try and get to as many of these as possible. But one of these here, I think, kind of leads into something that we got to talk about now. And, of course, it's going to be the talking point moving forward. And I plan to have a video out. I'm going to it'll probably be at some point tomorrow. I mean, if I'm lucky, maybe I'll do it later tonight and try and have a long list of candidates. I'm thinking about 25 right now and maybe try and narrow that down as it goes throughout the search. But I think that there's about, a good list of that. Last time when we thought this coach search was going to happen, I came up with about 25 potential candidates that, right now with a widespread view. But let's just kind of give some of our initial, I guess, favorites and thoughts here. As Blake Carter asked, what's the gut feeling on the realistic chances Jimbo Fisher is the coach next year? Skeptical, he says. But I think personally, the 2 names you're going to hear the most, the 2 elephants in the room with this coaching search is Rich Rod and Jimbo. Both those names are definitely going to come up 100%. I'm more in the Rich Rod camp if you're telling me to decide between the 2. I'm just not the biggest Jimbo Fisher fan. I think, obviously he has a national championship ring. That speaks a lot, but that was way back in 2013. The game's a lot different now. His offense is kind of old. He would have to definitely bring in a young offensive coordinator. And you look at his time at Texas A&M, all the money in the world, #1 recruiting class, and didn't get it done there. So Texas A&M there, he did less with more. And then here coming to West Virginia where you have to do more with less. I just don't know if I trust Jimbo. So I'm personally, I wouldn't mind to see Rich Rod come back around. He's a candidate that I like, but I'm more in the camp right now because Neal Brown's got me scared of group of 5 coaches, and then Dana before that's got me scared of coordinators. So I kind of want somebody with experience. Rich Rod, Jimbo's 2 names that's been tossed around, but Dan Mullen, Chip Kelly. There's others that kind of come to my mind as well, just off the top of my head. But there will be plenty of other names getting into the mix. But Brad, anyone that you've got on your list that no one's really talking about, or your thoughts on either Jimbo or Rich Rod or any of that?
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of all of that. Inside out first. So I've seen some people bring up some Andy Kotelnicki in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
That would definitely be interesting. I think that you're going to have 2 dynamics, like what you've kind of like pulled out already, which is your like straight up homers who want, or the big donors who want Jimbo Fisher or Rich Rod or somebody from West Virginia who's going to come in and make, like somebody commented earlier, make Bruce Irving the defensive end coach and, bring in all these West Virginia guys. And then, they're going to get Nick Saban as the defensive coordinator. And then, Don Nealon's going to come back and actually teach the linemen. And that's what they're going to, and then there's probably Ren Baker who's like, hey, let me go out there and find the best man for the job. Right. And so it comes into that weighing how much is West Virginia included in that. Right. And so, it's how important is West Virginia in that. If you ask any West Virginian, I think they're going to say it matters a lot. And I think that I don't know. Neal Brown came in and really related with the state. Seemed like a home run hire, said all the right things, did all the right things, but just ultimately didn't win. Part of me feels honestly like it's because he's too nice of a guy. He's too family of a guy, which I loved in him as a person, but I think that it hurt him as a coach. Yeah. I think that's kind of just like, I think that all the noise kind of got to his team. I think that they were a bit soft, which again, I loved. I thought that was going to be a great thing. But when I look at it, I see a team that's undisciplined, unprepared. I think that West Virginia needs somebody that's a little bit more tough love, like what Rich Rod used to give and things like that. Those are the kind of coaches that have been successful, not ones that just talked up their players, but the ones that were really incredibly tough on them.
Yeah.
And so I think, and so I think that that's where you get a lot of that draw. And so kind of to what you're saying, if I'm being asked between the 2 of them, I'm also going Rich Rodriguez, and I would have never said that in the past because of just how it's gone. But through the years and through the interviews that he's done, and kind of like the mellowing of feelings, I think that he would be welcomed back, but I think that he would have to come back for cheap. I think that you'd have to look at him and be like, hey, Rich Rod, you owe us a little something here, sir. If you're going to come back, you're going to take, $1 million, $2 million a year and then show what you're worth. And then maybe we'll pay you a little more.
Yeah. Well, I think that
so,
now
pay his offensive coordinators, like you said, bring in a great offensive coordinator, really pay the supporting people around him, let him be the absolute, embodiment of what the program should be, but get him some coordinators that can help instill that and then let him see what he can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, facts. And I think that'd be like the plus side of Rich Rod is that, that a lot of the staff that he has at Jack State, he'd probably bring with him because a lot of them is the staff that he had, at WVU. He's got Rick Trickett there. He's got a lot of the same assistant pieces, and so you would know what you were getting there with that. And also it's like the ideal time for that. Like if Rich Rod's ever going to come back to WVU, this is going to be probably the time that it would happen, where he's just now got back into the head coaching game after being the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, and he's been at a lower level school, took them from the FCS to the FBS, now has them, competing for conference titles their second year, here at this division. And while he's getting paid that low amount, coaching that low program is a chance where you could get him, like you said, at an affordable rate to be able to come here, because that's one thing West Virginia's not gonna be able to pay somebody, 6, 7, 8 million. Neal Brown was making like $4 million a year. So you're looking at bringing somebody in for, 3 or 4, 5 at max, but probably not even that. So, and you would have to have somebody that's affordable. And I think that's why Rich Rod and Jimbo are 2 names that keep popping up, because Rich Rod, like we said, is at a lower level. So it would be a slight upgrade for him, but he would probably take, not too much money to be able to come home. And Jimbo doesn't need the money. He has that amazing buyout. He's getting paid for life for Texas A&M almost. So he doesn't really need the money, but he would maybe come back because he's a hometown guy. I know a lot of people were talking about, an interview they did a while back where he said he would, come back to WVU if the circumstances ever, came up, which of course now they are. So who knows? But I think those 2 are 2 names that are up there. You mentioned Kotelnicki. I think that's a good coordinator name. I think if you're looking defensive coordinators, I know Glenn Schumann at Georgia has been mentioned. Obviously, Tony Gibson's name's probably going to come up again. Probably someone that people will mention and look at. But then I think you got to look still, even though like I said, even though Neal Brown's kind of got me against the group of 5, there are some, I think, decent candidates there. I think of Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, the coach at Toledo, Jason Candle is another one that comes to mind. So there's definitely a big candidate pool for West Virginia to look at, especially, like I said, getting in as early as they did, being one of the first teams to, fire a coach. And it's also believed that there's not going to be a ton of coaching moves this offseason. So I think Ren Baker picked a good time to finally make this move. And I know a lot of people talked about the extension last year that he made, but he actually helped himself a little bit because now they have a longer time frame to pay out this buyout. It gave him an extra year, or even maybe a little bit more than a year, to be able to do that. So hey, that's an interesting name, Anthony Becht. I hadn't thought about that. He's got coaching experience. You never know. Could look at it. I did see that. I think it was It's Not Okay Golf was talking about Bruce, so I had to pull it up and see what he said on Twitter. But he said, WVU needs to let me coach D-line / outside backers, tag Ren and tell him to bring me home. That's pretty funny. And then Country Roads Trust put this out as well. Thank you to Neal for his dedication to WVU football and student athletes he's guided over the years. And this is an important part of this tweet right here. And I think that this is definitely true. And I'm hoping that there is a nice cash flow going into the NIL for Ren making this move, especially if people like the hire, there may be even more coming in. But now more than ever, it's time to rally around the program and invest in the future, support WVU football through the membership initiatives, and ensure we remain competitive at the highest level so that we can build the path forward. And they got your links there. So check out this tweet at Country Roads Trust there on social media. If you're not already a member, go ahead and do it. You can do it for as low as like $19 a month. I think it's $18.76, right? That's the one I do. And, at least you feel like you're supporting a little bit. Every little bit counts. Or if you can't do that, can't become a member, just do a little one-time pledge. Help them, get some players in here for the new coach coming in and help us have success moving forward and have a better era under the new coach. But wanted to share that from Country Roads Trust. Buy
a shirt, buy a hoodie, buy something.
Yeah, for sure. Just give some support to the NIL, or even if you're in Morgantown, before the Texas Tech game, we went and ate at the Country Roads Trust little pub there, the Goat Pub. That supports the player. Their portion of that does. So you go get you a sandwich, a drink, whatever, and that supports as well. Anything you can do to help support right now would go a great length for sure. But I want to. Any thoughts there, Brad, or anything else we got anything else you got there as far as candidates? I'm gonna try and throw a poll into the chat here and get some people's opinions here on the Jimbo Fisher Rich Rod debate.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not. I'll wait and see kind of like what unfolds with the coaches. I'll see your list that you pull out and kind of go from there. But at this point, I'm gonna mourn my man Brown. Pouring out for the homie. People with the last name Brown took an L today.
Yeah, the long lost cousin. All right, I'm gonna put this up. I'm gonna put a poll up in chat, guys. Just with the 2 big names, and then I'll put other, and you guys can share it in the chat there. I'll put a couple in there. Let's do it that way. Okay, poll going up in chat, guys. Obviously, you heard what side me and Brad are kind of on in the Jimbo Rich Rod debate, which seemed to be kind of 2 of the big names going around. But I threw a poll up in chat there. Which side do you guys land on? Jimbo, Rich Rod? Also threw Dan Mullen's name in there, and then I just put other. It only lets you add 4 options to the poll, unfortunately. So if it's somebody else, if you'd like to see one of the coordinators, maybe the Codal Nicky, like people have talked about, maybe Brian Hartline from Ohio State, Chip Kelly. There's been a lot of names been floated around, but in the poll here before the stream ends and see your guys' thoughts there. But be sure and vote on that if you're in here. And like I said, we'll share your thoughts. We'll go through some of your all's comments now. I'll try to pick out some of them. Like I said, we'll pick out channel members. We'll pick out super chats because they're easier to point out, but we'll try to get to some of these others as well. But if you're in here live, or if you're watching this on a playback, you can help us out by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing to the channel. We'll continue to cover the coaching search. We'll cover recruiting and transfer portal. Appalachian Paisano channel member says, let's go Nick Saban. Anybody's fighting around Morgantown yet? Hey, the flight trackers will be out in force, and I'm sure there'll be some people convincing you that Nick Saban is coming back, man. But I think that there's probably as good a chance of me or Brad getting the job as Nick Saban coming back, unfortunately. Now, I'd love to see it, man. That'd be the greatest Christmas present ever, but I know you're being tongue in cheek there. I apologize you pretty solid, but I appreciate the humor.
No, he's our future defensive coordinator. You can't convince me otherwise.
That's right. Pat White, coaching the offense. Let's see. Redbone with a good point. Kendrick's money talks in Morgantown. And I think, a guy that Kendrick supports is Rich Rod. I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Let's see. Sam Ventura says he would say no to Tony Gibson. Personally, I think I would too, but I'm not against, and I would not be surprised to see West Virginia, if they don't hire a guy that specializes in defense, to hire someone that maybe has a long-time defensive coordinator that's accompanied in places and been successful, because I think that's one thing that you look at over the past 2 tenures between Neal and between Dana. A lot of the issue has been bad defenses, and unfortunately also Tony Gibson was involved in that Dana era, so I think that would probably steer people away. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I just assume it's definitely a name that's probably going to come up. Any thoughts there on that one, Brad, on Tony Gibson or West Virginia potentially hiring a defensive-minded coach?
Yeah, I love Tony Gibson, but I love I love the idea of hiring a defensive-minded coach more than I like Tony Gibson. I think like we were talking about, you need a guy that really embraces that rugged, tough mentality, blue-collar mentality that I think that Neal Brown was kind of lacking, and I just think that that's easier to find in a defensive coordinator than an offensive coordinator. Couldn't tell you why, but it just feels that way.
Yeah. 100% agree, man. Yeah, 100% agree with this comment too, Tosh Miller. Maybe you make a call, but the only problem is, and I just pulled this up. That's what I was searching there, because I thought that this had happened a couple weeks ago. They locked Indiana after they got off to the 10-0 start. Kurt Signetti signed a new 8-year deal, runs through the 2032 season, and pay him an average of $8 million per year, $1 million retention bonus, plus the new value of the contract at $72 million. So he's making $8 million per year at Indiana now, going to be, and we really can't match that at WVU currently. So unfortunately, as much as I would have loved to have Signetti, especially seeing the success that he has in Indiana, I think we missed the window on that. I think if we fired Neal Brown after 2021 or 2022, you maybe get a chance to have Kurt Signetti, but I think we missed that window now, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely make the call. I think Ren Baker's shown that he'll make the call. I mean, people are even talking about Saban. Ren Baker's probably going to make the call, and as soon as Saban turns him down, he'll probably say, "Well, who would you recommend?" Or something like that, maybe. Because I think
probably a conversation that's already happened.
Yeah, because when we talk about it could have already happened. You're right. Because when we talk about the basketball search, I mean, remember there was reports he called Jay Wright, he called all the big names that have retired, even in the basketball search. So Ren Baker's already shown that he's a guy that will swing for the fences. So we'll see what happens. See, where were we at here in chat? Appreciate you guys tuning in and chiming in. Throw any questions, comments. We'll try and get to as many as possible there as we can. Try and pick out some of them. Like I said, there's a lot in here, so won't get to them all, unfortunately. But if you want yours to stand out, you can send it as Super Chat, or we'll try and get to all of them from channel members as well, because they stand out as well with their badges there, their WVU football helmets, which you get for being a channel member here, one of those perks. Yeah, 13 million reasons why you weren't getting Signetti, Curtis D, indeed, for sure. Blake Carter, if OSU fires Ryan Day, how would people feel about him? I don't think they're going to fire him, personally. They might, you never know. Ohio State, you're not winning the big games. That's all that matters, and losing to Michigan is pretty much unforgivable, especially losing to Michigan consistently, and then losing to Michigan in a year where Ohio State just put, 20 plus million, whatever, into their NIL. But I think, they're still going to make the playoffs. So I don't think you can really fire a playoff coach, especially if Ohio State makes a run. We'll see what happens. But, I mean, if they did fire him, I think that he's obviously a guy you want to maybe reach out to and, give a call to. Why not? But like I said, I don't know if you could afford him either. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a price tag thing, because hearing people talk recently about, what we were paying Neal Brown and, the bottom quarter of the Big 12, or something like that. The bottom 5 paid coaches in the Big 12 or something crazy like that. So, yeah, you're not going to be able to afford somebody like that, which, again, is where I come to. You're going to have to either go with somebody like a Rich Rod or a Jimbo, somebody that's like old time you're gonna be able to get for cheap and build around them, or you're gonna have to try to find some offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator or something and try to snatch them up and say, hey, show us what you got before you get paid.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the way the money is right now, that may be
And
the
more
case.
unfortunately for the new coach, Neal Brown just ruined getting an early extension.
Yeah, that's actually 100% true. You're right about that, because if it wasn't for that early extension, who knows? They may have fired him after 3 or 4 years. You never know. It's hard to tell for sure. But I think Ren Baker's come in and proven that he's willing to put his stamp on the program, and he's putting a good stamp on the program thus far. And hopefully, this proves to be a good move. Rich Rod for 1.5 sounds good to Chris D. Hey, I'm right there with you, man. I know there's a lot of people that are against it, but a lot more are getting onto it by the day, I think. Go offer the SMU coach big money before SMU does. Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like SMU is probably going to lock him up, and SMU, unfortunately, Walter, has more money than us for sure, especially now. Think about that. The scandal back in the day was paying players and stuff before it was legal, all that, the Pony Express days, and now that they can legally do it, they're gonna make a run. They're already showing that in the first year in the ACC. So I don't know if we could compete with SMU that Texas money. Sam Ventura says, prefer a defensive guy or someone with a good defensive guy they bring along. Prefer not to have the 3-3-5 back. I think, this brings something to mind for me, Brad, and appreciate your comment there, Sam, which kind of transitioned to something that I feel is I just want to get away from the kind of air raid systems. I mean, obviously Neal Brown tried to rely and focus on the run more over the past, 2 or 3 seasons, tried to be a run first team and kind of a ball control offense, but he was still, from that same coaching tree as Dana Holgerson, that air raid tree with the, the Mike Holtz tendencies and all that. I'm not Mike Holtz, Mike Leach tendencies and all of that. And, their passing routes and passing tree was all air raid based. And obviously I think we've proven that doesn't work between, 2 different coaches. So I'd like to get back to a different, style. That's why I'm a fan of Rich Rod. Get back to a system that's worked here, and it's proved that it's still working today. Look at what he's done there at Jacksonville State. Running back over 1,500 yards. I think he's Conference Player of the Year. Quarterback over 1,000 yards. One of the top rushing offenses in the country and top total offenses in the country, and doing it with a lot of the same staff pieces. So, something like that, I would like to get back to just a different system and just more of an identity than we've had as of late under both of these coaching staffs. But I think definitely defense has to be something you're worried about as well because of how porous defense has been. So I think obviously you're probably looking for something kind of counter opposite. You're looking at stellar defense and probably something not involved with the air raid tree, just my personal opinion. What do you think, bro?
No, I love that idea. I think that the RPO and that kind of option has always worked best for West Virginia. It's good for a team that struggles to get great offensive linemen that can kind of get shifty guys that are a little explosive. You don't need absolute, 6'5" monsters on the outside to make it work. And so, I'd love to see that. And I do think that Neal Brown was getting closer to that there at the end. I just don't think Garrett Green was the guy to do it. I think that he screwed up and should have played Nico Markiel after the end of half of the season. So I think that even would have been just successful. But I would like to see us make more of a switch, especially with the personnel that we've got, if we can retain them. I mean, if you were talking about retaining your kids, letting Rich Rodriguez come in and point to Steve Slayton and Pat White and saying, hey, I did that is a pretty good argument.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%. 100%. That's one thing, and it's funny because last time when we were talking about this like 2 years ago, I wasn't a fan of it because I'm not a fan of, really like the recycle coaches. It doesn't work a ton. But then it's, been working, at some places I've seen, we've seen it work. There is some exceptions. Of course, I do want to throw that out there. But now a couple years later, after seeing what Rich Rod's done at Jacksonville State, who he literally just moved up to this level, that impressed me. And then, of course, you look at Ole Miss and kind of when they kickstarted their success, Rich Rod was the one running that offense there at Ole Miss. And, the early days there, that's where he was at before he went over there to Jacksonville State. So I'm a little bit higher up on it than I was previously. And especially with just a lot of the other options that are being thrown around, it's just one that would be near the top of my list personally, but maybe some other options will come in. Brad's probably going to pop out and pop back in. I think I seen some people in the chat saying something about his mic acting up. Hopefully that'll fix. Sometimes that'll do the trick. I haven't heard it in my headphones, but sorry if it's been an issue. Apologies there, guys. See if this fixes it when he pops back in here.
Yeah, sorry. People said I was having microphone issues, so I jumped back in.
I just saw the comment pop. I figured that's probably what it was.
Yeah,
I don't hear it in my headphones, but I didn't really hear it before, so that might have did it. But
it was pulling from the wrong microphone, and StreamYard. Once you change your microphone,
I was about to say you got to pop out. And pop. It's the same thing with my camera. Sometimes when the battery dies,
I was like, I was pulling from this, and it's got like a kink in it, I think. So I was like, that's not what I wanted. So sorry, y'all, for your ears. I was trying to fix it, but hopefully it's fixed now. Let me know. Please give me a. Okay, thanks. Paisano is
fine now. Cool. Cito, Kaito, John Summerall, or Kenny Dillingham. I think both obviously good coaches. Kenny Dillingham's shown a ton with Arizona State, but I don't know if you'll be able to pull him away from Arizona State, especially, they're going to the conference championship game. They may lock him down. I would say that may be an early extension situation. And John Summerall, as great as a coach as he seems to be, and I think maybe Troy's success during Neal Brown's tenure was maybe a little bit more tied to him than previously we thought. And you look at did a great job here at Tulane this year. But I think the fact that he was with Neal Brown at Troy, and that he has, the ties to Neal Brown, is probably going to keep our athletic department away from John Summerall. As good as the coach as I do really actually believe he is, I think that he won't be probably a candidate here because of the Neal Brown ties. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know much about them.
Let's see. Penn State offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, Veritax says. Andy Kotelnicki, I think, is probably going to be a guy that's on the list. Charles Huff, the head coach at Marshall. Not a big Jimbo fan, but not a detractor. Yeah, I'm not a big Jimbo fan either, personally. That's just me. But Charles Huff at Marshall, interesting name. I've seen a couple people throw that in the chat. I mean, he's been successful there. They're going to the conference championship again this year. I think I saw Southern Miss or somebody was targeting him, but also I don't know. I don't watch a ton of Marshall. Maybe you know a little bit more than I do, but I have seen a lot of their fans upset at Charles Huff, like even wanting to fire him at some. So I don't know. It's interesting because it seems like they're having success, but I've seen a lot of Marshall fans seem like they're unhappy. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Like you said, Marshall fans I think they were in it for this weekend, but I don't even think they're competing for the conference championship this year. I think that they were right there on the fringe, and then got blown out, I think, yesterday. So
did they? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they lost yesterday. So I don't think it's I think it's also a no to Huff. I think that you're in that realm where there's probably going to be about 3 names that pop out over the next couple of days, and one of those is going to get put against Jimbo and Rich Rod. I really honestly think that that's where it's going to go towards. I think that Brent Baker's going to want to make his own decision, but I think that everybody's going to kind of influence him otherwise.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, Marshall won yesterday. They came back. They were not.
Did they come back and win? Also,
well, let's go Marshall.
Okay. Who was it that I saw somebody? Yeah, Krista. What about the Boise State coach? I don't think that would be a bad person to reach out to. Spencer Danielson there. I think it's his second season there. Obviously, they're looking like they're going to be in the playoff. He took over as the interim coach, and then, but it just depends on if he would be willing to leave, that soon after only a couple of years. But, that's maybe a group of 5 guy you could reach out to for sure. Maybe it's a name that's on the list. Not a bad name to throw out there. Appreciate that, Krista. I like it. Bob Stooped, overworked, underpaid, said, I don't think that he's probably going to be willing to come back to the college game. He was coaching in the XFL, but I don't know if he's in the new merged one or whatever. But I think if you're going after one of those coaches, Anthony Beck would probably be more likely than Bob Stoops with the ties. But I think Ren Baker's also shown that, the ties really don't matter to him. He just wants to find the best coach that, he feels strong about and moves quickly to get Darren DeVries, who didn't have the ties when a lot of people were pitching guys with West Virginia ties. So, maybe we're all thinking Jimbo and Rich Rod, but that's just us thinking. Maybe I'm sure Ren Baker's maybe thinking outside the box and we'll make a good hire, And regardless of what happens, I'm going to hopefully be more objective after the hire this time, because I think a lot of us fell victim to, Neal Brown being a home run hire, and, it was never going to go any way but up, and it was super positive, and West Virginia was going to be winning Big 12 titles because his attention to detail, and couldn't have gotten a better hire that late in the cycle and such. So, no matter how everyone is about this next hire, whoever it is, I'm going to have to try and tread lightly, because, man, I bought into that hook, line, and sinker, and it did not pay off. So I think, if anything, that shows me that no coach hire is foolproof. So as mad as I am and don't want to see Jimbo, and if it ends up being Jimbo and I'm not going to like it, I could very well be super wrong about that, and he could end up having a great run at West Virginia if he ends up being the coach. You just never really know. It's a crapshoot with these coaching searches. I think that the Neal Brown tenure has proven that to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. A couple G5 names here. Jamie Chadwell from Liberty. That's one of my favorite ones there. Veritax. Bob Chesney from James Madison. Ricky Rain of Old Dominion.
You like Chadwell when he was at Coastal, right?
Yeah, when he was at Coastal and then went to Liberty. So maybe you could pull him from there. I really like his system. And Jamie Chadwell, to me, is probably one that'll be high on my list, because that's similar to like a Rich Rod style offense, but has his own spin on it, and would be something different that would work potentially at West Virginia. Saito says, imagine they announced Ryan Switzer. Hey, you never know. He did just get promoted. He's now the head coach of Tulsa. So what guy with West Virginia ties for sure. But Ren Baker's already on it. That's the good thing, guys. And I appreciate everyone throwing thoughts in the chat there and questions. Been great interaction throughout this stream, and we've shared, of course, the official announcement from the university, some of the player reactions, and we've talked a little bit about candidates. Like I said, I'm going to try and go into some research, and I'm going to try and make a list of about 25 names that I think are potential guys West Virginia could reach out to. I might try and get that out later tonight, but at worst, I'll have it out tomorrow. But at best, I'm going to try and get it out later tonight. So be on the lookout for that coming here on the channel as far as future thoughts. And this probably won't be the last stream we do. Obviously, we'll do one when someone's hired, but maybe throughout the coverage, we'll do more as well as more news breaks and such. We'll have some more emergency streams.
Talk a bowl game if it comes.
Yeah, bowl game preview will be coming up as long as West Virginia continues to play that. Like I said, I'll be live on Wednesday covering signing day, and we're going to try and still do one live stream per week throughout the off season, even though the regular season's over, and we'll still talk WVU basketball and the other news and such. First decommit Evan Powell. I see JB saying, yeah, we mentioned that a little bit earlier there. Hey, Justin Eller, next WVU coach. Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
He's probably celebrating tonight.
Sign him up, man. Sign him up. Shout out to our boy Justin Eller, member of the CRW team. Hadn't been on here for a while, but he said he's thinking about making a comeback. So hopefully he comes back around some, maybe seeing his face pop up here on these streams and stuff in the near future. But that's just kind of what you can expect from us coming up on the slate, besides this coaching search, where we'll be popping up if anything else breaks on it news-wise. So if you haven't been a subscriber to the CRW already, be sure to do that. Tons of WVU football coverage, recruiting, transfer portal. And if you can support us monthly and become a channel member, and if you're a big-time WVU football fan, you really should, because you'll get film reviews. You can all 12 games of film reviews up for those now, as soon as I get the one for Texas Tech up anyways. And then, of course, game rewatches, player grades videos, snap counts, depth chart projections, injury reports, all that available for channel members. And not to mention the West Virginia helmets there you see in the channel members in the chat. And they also have custom emojis they can use. You get that as well. But I appreciate you guys being here and supporting us anyway. In a fast, easy, and free way you can do it is the like button and subscribing here if you haven't already. But Brad, any parting thoughts there? Anything you want to add as far as West Virginia moving on from Neal Brown or the candidates? Anything you got there? Get ready to wrap this one up here and be back to talk about it in the near future, I'm sure, though. But anything you got here at the tail end?
Yeah, no, man. I mean, it's like I said at the jump. I'm sad to see him go. I'm a big supporter of Neal Brown all the way through. I'll support him and his next steps. I hope to see him be successful wherever he goes, and I think that he will be. But I do think that this was the right move. I think it was needed, and Ren Baker had the courage to make that decision, the toughness to make that decision, and now he's got to come through with a bomb hire. I think that a good basketball coach hire probably is going to get him some leeway, and we will we'll see what happens, man. It's back to being we've had Neal Brown ever since I started doing this video channel with you all, and it's going to be weird to talk about a different coach. I think that's actually one of the first things that got. I was always very interested in Mountaineer football and talking, but once he came on is when I was really excited to jump in and talk about it, because I was really excited to talk about Neal Brown. And so it's hard to see him go, but hey, next coach, I'm going to be just as excited to watch them play as well. So
Yeah. And we're always going to support WVU no matter what. But that's funny. That's an interesting point. I completely forgot about that because the first year of the podcast was 2018, Dana's final year, and then you came on in 2019 when which was Neal's first year. So yeah, he has been the coach the whole time, and so this is going to be like the first coaching search we've really had to cover in full. I think since we've really kind of known what we're doing a little bit more than we did back then, as much as you can say that we know what we're doing.
Yeah, if you don't count the little mini coaching search we did when we didn't know if Neal Brown was coming back before last year.
Which true. When we were talking about it a little bit, but officially now then we'll have to have a new coach, and that's of course was subject to this stream. Neal Brown out, West Virginia looking for a new coach officially, but do see some people talking about the West Virginia women's team 8-0, have beat everyone by 20 plus, and they're in the championship game tournament tonight. Like I said, I don't think it's on a television network anywhere. It's on some weird streaming service, but it is. I will share at 7:30, and they're playing number 5 in the country, Texas, who's also undefeated. So West Virginia can bolt themselves into the top 10, and the women have looked great. So hopefully they get the win. If nothing else, you can listen to the call on the radio, guys. But at 7:30, check that out here in about an hour's time from when we're live. But those of you that have tuned into this on a playback as well, I appreciate that also. Be sure you can still hit the thumbs up button doing that and subscribe here to the channel if you're watching this on a playback as well. But like I said, we'll have a video out on candidates in the near future, and signing day is December 4th. I'll be live that morning covering the signings as they come in, and we'll talk about any other news that pops up in the meantime and in between time. But the only other thing that I've got is I got to end this poll, and we got to see these results, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's check it out here. People in the stream.
Mountaineers' next head coach.
And according to the people in the stream here, the percentage that it breaks down, like I said, we can only put 4 options in there. But who do you want to see WVU target for the next head coach? And number 1, I'm a fan of it. Rich Rod, 36% there is who gets the votes here. And then behind him is Other at 28%. Then you get Jimbo at 18% and Dan Mullen at 16%. So, hey, having Jimbo down low, I appreciate, and having Rich Rod up high, I appreciate. And don't mind Other being thrown in there so high as well. But those are the poll results. Appreciate you guys voting in that. That's always going to continue to be trying the theme here as well. Always trying to have the poll of the night throughout these live streams. But that's pretty much all I've got. West Virginia moves on from Neal Brown after 6 seasons. Plenty of candidates on the board. We'll talk about them more in the near future, but those are 2 of the main topic names there, and got your thoughts on some of those here in the chat. And I appreciate you guys sharing candidates and asking questions here and tuning in and chiming in. Look forward to talking to you guys in the near future, and appreciate you, Brad, joining me as well tonight on such short notice for this emergency after Neal Brown is outed here at WVU.
R.I.P. Brown.
Yep. The end of an era. The climb that was is now over, and West Virginia will begin a new climb after a search for a new head coach. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully a better tenure for whoever's up next for West Virginia. But we'll talk about whoever that is as news continues to unfold on that. And who knows how soon we'll be live. So be sure to subscribe here, have the notification bell on so you'll know when we do go live as news comes out on this, because it could be at any moment. These things are very fluid. So stay tuned with us here at the CRW. We'll continue to cover this coaching search and anything WVU football related throughout the off season as well. Appreciate you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Brad, appreciate you, man, as always. For my great co-host, Brad, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.